Sam?
Hello?
Is that you, Sam?
Oh, sorry. Never mind.
Sam is the IT guy that's supposed to be on this meeting. I want to make sure he's going to stream this.
Okay. So should I wait to start it up?
I see it live on YouTube right now.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. I call the Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission order for May 6, 2020. Will the staff please note the presence of a quorum by calling the roll?
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Graham?
Present.
Mr. Horke?
Here.
Mr. Johns?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here.
Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz? Ms. Boljeric?
Here.
And Mr. Schmitz, I think you cut out a little bit.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. We have a quorum.
Okay.
Very good. Everyone's here. Next item up is approval of minutes from April 20th, 2020. An opportunity to review those minutes. Are there any additions, corrections, or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Please state your name when you make any motions or comments tonight.
Maui.
McCarty will
Go ahead.
McCarty will motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Maui seconds it.
I have a motion made by Mr. McCarty, seconded by Mr. Maui, to approve the minutes of April 20th, 2020 as written. Will the staff please call the roll?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Sorry, you cut out. Was that me?
Yes, Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
And Ms. Boljeric?
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you. We have several items on the agenda tonight, all of which require a public hearing. So if you would please review the rules and procedures for tonight's meeting.
Yes, I'm sorry. I will do that in just a second. Okay, due to the COVID-19 emergency as declared by the Governor of Indiana, the format and conduct of the meeting has been modified to comply with executive orders regarding the conduct of public meetings, public hearings, and public gatherings. Relevant portions of the Indiana open door law have been amended or suspended during the pendency of this emergency. For our general procedures this evening, all petitions will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition and describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. Then the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission. The President of the Plan Commission will call on each member to provide comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition, and the petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments. If a member of the public has any comments regarding a petition, they should be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded on to Plan Commission members and the relevant petitioner. A few additional comments for Plan Commission members and petitioners. Please have your email accessible during the meeting so you can read new comments when they are available. And also please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. There are no items on consent agenda. There are no items of business for consideration this evening. So we'll move on to the first item, which requires a public hearing, 2004-ODP-06 and 2004-SPP-06, Chatham Villages Phase 1.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, I am Corey Harris of the Community Development Department. The item before you is the proposed Chatham Villages Phase 1 Primary Plat and Overall Development Plan located west of US 31, east of Tomlinson Road, north of 196th Street, and south of 203rd Street. The proposed plans are for 207 single-family residential lots and one block on approximately 147 acres in the Chatham Hills PUD district. This item is scheduled for its public hearing tonight. It has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received 3 public comments. Phil Sundling and Brad Hinkey of Hinkey Development Group are here to present, and I am available for questions for staff.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Plan Commission. Phil Sundling here alongside Brad Hankey with Hankey Development. Pam, if you don't mind, could you pull up the presentation for tonight?
Yeah, Phil, this is Kevin. It should be up on the screen at this point.
Okay, yep, we see it now. Okay. As you can see, if scroll to the second page, Kevin, if you would. Kevin, are you able to scroll to the second page, the site plan?
Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be a little bit of a delay here. So, yeah, it's there. Are you?
I see it now. Yep. Okay, perfect. As you can see here in the site plan, the main entry of this Chatham Village kind of aligns with the existing main entry into existing Chatham Hills. Just to get you oriented here, on the north side is 203rd Street. On the west side is Tomlinson Road, and obviously on the east there's US 31. The corridor, the main entry corridor, Chatham Hills Boulevard extended east. That'll essentially be kind of a historic downtown feel. We're going to have street trees. I think in our PUD we note that we're going to have front porches. We'll have porch swings, flower boxes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with West Clay and Carmel, but it'll have kind of a West Clay feel to it, a historic downtown feel to it. As you travel east on that roadway, you kind of toward the southeast, you'll see a treed area, a forested area. That will be our Chatham Village, and that'll have tons of green space, many acres of green space. We'll have parks, there'll be trails, a playground. We'll have an amphitheater there, an aquatics area. There will be charming commercial areas, commercial buildings in that area, like coffee shops, unique restaurants, and folks will have an opportunity here to fish in that 12-acre lake south of the village. You can see kind of at the bottom of the site plan there. This area will have so many great amenities for Chatham families, other Westfield residents to enjoy, to experience and enjoy. On the north side, along 203rd Street, you'll see another pond there. We've had communications with Mr. Schultz and Mr. Snap up there. They noted to us that they had historic drainage issues in that area. We've included, in an effort to buffer and to solve some of those drainage issues, we've included a pond on that north side. Also on the north side there along 203rd, kind of east where you see Chad Hill Boulevard, there's a forested area, an existing forested area. We will preserve those trees along the south side of 203rd Street when we develop that roadway through there. Additionally, we will preserve the forested area in the village, much of the forested area just west of the village. You see a trail, kind of a trail connection from Tomlinson Road that connects into Chatham Hills Boulevard. Yeah, we're gonna preserve as many of those streets as we can. We'll meander those streets along the south side of 203rd Street. Also, you can see Chad Hiddle Boulevard there to the east. That's a aerial roadway that's contemplated in Westfield's thoroughfare plan. As part of this development, we will extend Chad Hiddle Boulevard from 191st Street up to 203rd Street. This shows the portion of it that's through Section 1. Chad Hiddle will essentially function as an interceptor for Tomlinson Road. So I know there's a lot of traffic on Tomlinson Road now. When Chad Hiddle goes in, it's going to intercept a lot of that traffic, which obviously helps Chatham Hills, but also helps a lot of those residents along Tomlinson Road. I know there's been issues on Tomlinson Road with quality. We've had numerous conversations with Westfield Public Works about that. We've talked with them through the zoning process. I don't think there's any plans now that the city has to improve Tomlinson Road, but our thought in conversations with John Nail, the city engineer there, when we do construct Chad Hiddle, a lot of those concerns will be kind of solved naturally through intercept. And I'm gonna kick it over to Brad. Is there anything you want to add?
No, yeah, good evening, members. Really appreciate your time, especially during these unique circumstances. Just wanted to echo what Phil said there. It is extremely important to us to really have that quality and doing a really neat entry. Kind of, you can see how the road slightly curves coming down to the water, to the lake area. So really creating that village type feel, and you'll notice as you maybe scroll through some of the photos of homes that are attached that Phil indicated the maybe the planters or the flags or the little white Canterbury fences in the front yards. We think we can, with all that and some other things to it, really feel coming down to the water and having the little village area then on the water, as Phil indicated.
Phil Sumling back here. Obviously, we're available for any questions that you guys may have. Corey, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. This item does require a public hearing this evening. I will open the public hearing on 2004 ODP-06, 2004 SPP-06, Chatham Villages Phase 1 at 7:12 p.m.
And as of now, we have received no additional emails other than the ones that have been uploaded.
Okay, we'll give it a minute and see if anything comes in. Nothing?
Nope, still nothing.
All right, I will close the public hearing at 7:14 p.m. We'll start the roll call on the commissioners if they have any questions or comments for staff or for the petitioners, starting with Dr. Kelleher.
Basically no comments. Mr. Sundling, it appears that you talked with the two people who wrote concerns, and I'm guessing that they are reasonably well satisfied with the discussion they had with you. That's my only question.
That is correct.
Okay, and that's it.
Sorry, Mr. Sundling, did you answer? I did not hear you.
Yeah, that's correct. I spoke with both of those property owners directly, correct.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Berkman, any questions or comments?
No, I don't. Thank you, Randy.
Okay. Mr. Horke, any questions or comments?
One minor one. There is a difference between materials in this presentation and some of the more engineered drawings at 199th Street. Is there only a cul-de-sac that connects to the alleyway that goes to the cul-de-sac further north, or is there going to be a street connection at 199th Street to whatever that southernmost street of this section is?
Yeah, so Phil Sundling here, Hankey Development. Great question. The property owner there on the southwest corner, we had a long conversation last week with him. I think we were originally showing a full access connection to 9th Street. He had concerns with many things, obviously, additional right-of-way taken in his front yard, having more traffic kind of in front of his property there. We discussed at length and came to an agreement that a cul-de-sac there to the east makes the most sense for all parties. We'll have obviously secondary connections into the development when we make our connection down at 196th Street. So obviously from a public safety perspective, we'll be good there with multiple access points. But yeah, as of right now, our plan is to cul-de-sac that east of Tomlinson as shown.
Okay, and that's fine, and I would defer to the public safety folks and the TAC committee if all that meets with their satisfaction. It would seem like before you get to the phases further south where that 196th Street road could happen, there would need to be something temporarily to one of these cul-de-sacs off of Tomlinson to have a second egress. Yes, no? Or staff, if not Phil?
Yes, this is Pam Howard. We will ensure that we work with the TAC committee. The public safety, mainly the fire department, would be the one who would be most concerned about the second entrance requirement. So we will definitely work with them and get their sign off prior to.
With that, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johns, any questions or comments?
No, I would echo Bob Horke's comments. I'm a little concerned until we do get the land to the south developed and opened, that we're really just channeling all the traffic back out to Tomlinson Road, and even the traffic that might go north on Chad Hiddle to 203rd Street, that's going to come back around and will eventually, it's got to come south on Tomlinson through that kind of crazy corner that's at 203rd and Tomlinson, which to me is kind of a traffic hazard corner. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the property to the south being developed and to having another southern exit from this development. So,
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Maui, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Mr. McCarty, questions or comments?
I'll just say that I love the vision for the project, for the future of what's to come. I think it'll be great for the community. Just to add my 2 cents what's worth with the discussion on Tomlinson Road. I mean, I've grown up my whole life out this area, so I've seen the development and how much busier the road has gotten. But, you know, it's kind of the age-old question, you know, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And you need those road impact fees and other things coming in order to improve a road like Tomlinson to make it safer for everyone. And same thing with the future projects south of this development here. So, yeah, no, I think what's to come in the future will be great. So thank you.
Thank you. Comments?
Did you say me, Mandy?
Yes, Dave Schmitz.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, no additional comments from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Spalgeric, any questions or comments?
Well, my biggest concern right now was with 203rd Street. And with the way that Chad Hiddle is designed, and with this not having further north access at this point, I'm concerned about construction and other traffic using 203rd Street for any kind of access for construction. That road is certainly not able to handle anything major. And so, again, that concerns me. We essentially have Tomlinson and 203rd. Neither one are really capable of handling much more than what they have right now. So that remains a concern for me. I know that we will, when construction is over, the improvements to Tomlinson, and we're not going to do that prior to the construction. But again, if 203rd, if there was some way to actually stub this until there's north access beyond 203rd Street, I don't see the relevance in this right now unless that was specifically for public safety. And if that's the case, they have those knockdown bollards and stuff they can do. And I would almost prefer to see that as opposed to having 203rd Street become a real nightmare for those residents on that street. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Anything additional from Mr. Sundling or Mr. Hinkie at this time?
Yeah. So just to respond to Cindy's comments, Cindy, great points there. First of all, regarding construction activity on 203rd Street, I think we're perfectly comfortable committing to limit any construction access from 203rd Street as we build these phases out. I think utilizing Tomlinson Road or even 196th Street from the south when we get to that area, we could certainly utilize those roadways to limit the construction activity on 203rd. Regarding the connection of Chad Hiddle Boulevard to and beyond 203rd Street, I'm happy to sit down with John Nail and Jeremy Lawler in Public Works Department to discuss that. If there's not a desire on the city's behalf to have that extended north, I mean, I'm sure we can have that discussion with them. On the interim, if your thought is to essentially kind of construct it as more of an emergency access, we can have that conversation with them as well.
Great. And, obviously I'm not an engineer and I'm not the fire department, so I don't feel comfortable weighing in. I did ask to see if John was available to be on this call. I'm not sure if he is or can speak to this. John, are you there? No, I guess
I don't believe John Nail was able to join tonight, but we can definitely get answers to your questions prior to this petition coming back.
Okay, and again, I mean, to have that sealed off for access, unless it's emergent, until we have a further, frontage road, that being Chad Hiddle going up to State Road 38, I just don't see the relevance in having that and having it potentially be used then for construction access or any other access for that matter, when that road is simply just it's not meant to be a collector of any sort. So I have a problem with seeing it used that way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
And I'm sorry, Randy, I did get a message that Andre has another comment.
Okay, Mr. Maui?
Yes, thank you, Randy. So after hearing everybody else's concerns, I'd like to say I share the concern in terms of traffic and the during construction and the future accesses that don't go through right now. My perspective on this, to kind of clarify why I had no comments or anything earlier, is from a planning perspective and from the perspective that we are looking at an ODP, SPP, it's not a PUD before us. I think all of the concerns have been brought up, and again, anybody else can correct me, but to me, those are more the pain of getting from A to B, whereas what we're looking at is the final product, what's appropriate here. And I looked at this as far as it's consistent with what was planned here. I think it belongs here, and all the rest of that, I pretty much just defer to TAC and Public Works and all the other entities that'll take a look at those things and make the decisions on behalf of the city in that regard. So just that comment. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah. Pam, does anyone have anything else?
No, I have not heard from anyone else. Thank you.
All right, then we will proceed with the next item of business. which is 2005-ODP-07, 2005-SPP-07, Austrian Pine Subdivision.
Good evening, Plan Commission. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The items before you this evening are the primary plat and overall development plan for the property that comprises the Austrian Pine PUD, which is approximately 12.5 acres located at the southeast corner of State Road 32 and Austrian Pine Way. This item is scheduled for a public hearing this evening. It has been properly noticed and advertised. The department has received no public comments. As there are still items requiring minor revisions, no action is requested this evening. Representative for the petitioner, Brad Sheff of Y Engineers, is present. He does not plan to present, but is available for questions, as am I, if there are any of staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crabtree. This item does require a public hearing this evening. I will open the public hearing on 2005-ODP-07, 2005-SPP-07, Austrian Pine Subdivision at 7:25 p.m.
This is Pam. At this time, we've received no additional emails or no emails for this petitioner.
Okay, we'll give it a minute. And nothing still?
Yes, still no emails.
All right. Getting no comment, we will close the public hearing at 7:27 p.m. Ms. Spoljarek, do you have any questions or comments for staff or petitioner's representative, Mr. Sheff?
I did prior to the meeting. I don't know if they have been corrected, and obviously this is only a public hearing, so I'm sure they'll be addressed prior to our next time seeing it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Schmitz, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maui, any questions or comments?
No questions, no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johns, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horke, any questions or comments?
Horke is the same. No questions, no comments.
Ms. Berkman, any questions or comments?
None at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher, any questions or comments?
Oh, I'm sorry, was on mute. I also have no questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything additional from staff at this time?
No, nothing additional.
Okay, then we will move on. Next item of business this evening, 2005-ODP-08, 2005-SPP-08, Rand Central Subdivision.
Good evening again, Plan Commission. This is Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The items before you this evening are the primary plat and overall development plan for Grand Central, which comprises the entirety of the 181st Street PUD, which is located on the south side of 181st Street between Wheeler Road and US Highway 31. No additional development is proposed at this time. The overall development plan only shows existing buildings and future infrastructure. This item is scheduled for a public hearing this evening. It has been properly noticed and advertised, and the department has received no comments. As these items are still awaiting minor revisions, no action is requested this evening. Representative for the petitioner, Andy Wirt of Church Hittle and Antrim, is present. He does not plan to make a presentation, but is available for questions, as am I, if there are any of staff. Thank you.
Thank you. This item does require a public hearing this evening. We'll open the public hearing on 2005-ODP-08, 2005-SPP-08, Grand Central Subdivision at 7:29 p.m.
At this time, we have received no emails for this project.
Okay, give it a minute. Still no questions or comments, emails?
Still no emails.
All right, I'll close the public hearing at 7:31 p.m. Dr. Kelleher, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Crabtree or Mr. Wirt?
No, I do not. Thank you.
You, Ms. Berkman, questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Mr. Horkay, any questions or comments?
No questions, no comments from Jorge.
Thank you. Mr. Johns, any questions or comments?
No, no questions.
Mr. Maui, questions or comments on this?
No, no questions or comments. Thank you.
You, Mr. McCarty, any questions or comments?
No, sir. Thank you.
You. Mr. Schmitz, any questions or comments?
None for me, thanks.
Okay. Ms. Spoljarek, questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from staff on this?
Nothing additional from staff. Thank you.
Very good. We will move on. Next item on the agenda this evening. 2005-ODP-10, 205, should be 2005, I believe, SPP-10, Hamilton Memorial Subdivision.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. This proposal is for the overall development plan and primary plat review of one lot on approximately 54 acres in the AGSF1 Agriculture and Single Family Rural District. This project is located at 4180 Westfield Road, which is generally at the northwest corner of State Road 32 and Shady Nook Road. This item is up for a public hearing tonight. It has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received no public comments. Ashton Fritz of Fritz Engineering, as well as representatives of the project and owners of the property, are here tonight. They do not plan on making any presentations, but all are available for questions. I am also available for questions should you have any for staff. Thank you.
It does require a public hearing this evening. Open the public hearing on 2005-ODP-10, 2005-SPP-10, Hamilton Memorial Subdivision at 7:33 p.m.
At this time, we have received no emails about this project.
Okay, give it a minute. Ms. Howard, any emails?
Still no emails. Thank you.
Right, I will close the public hearing, 7:35 p.m. Ms. Spoljarek, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Ernest or the representative, Mr. Fritz, this evening?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schmitz, any questions or comments?
None for me, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty, any questions or comments?
I do not. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Mr. Maui, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Johns, any questions or comments?
No questions, no comments.
Thank you. Mr. Horke, questions or comments?
Same with Jorge, no questions, no comments.
Thank you. Ms. Berkman, questions or comments?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further with staff on this item?
There are no additional comments from staff. Thank you.
We'll move on to our final item this evening. 2005-PUD-04, Junction PUD Amendment 4.
Yes, Pam Howard with the City of Westfield Community Development Department. Before you this evening, I have an amendment to the Junction Planned Unit Development District. This 3-acre site is located at 17655 Shamrock Boulevard and was zoned the Junction PUD in 2014. The proposed amendment would add multifamily dwellings as a permitted use, as well as increase the minimum and maximum building heights. The petitioner has been in contact with the Grand Junction Task Group, and a letter of support has been included as an exhibit on the agenda. This item is scheduled for a public hearing tonight. It has been properly noticed and advertised. Before end of day today, we had received 2 comments, which are included as Exhibit 9. Additionally, an additional comment was received just a few minutes ago, which has been forwarded to you. If the APC is satisfied with the petition, then a recommendation can be sent to the City Council. Otherwise, this petition would be back at a subsequent meeting for your recommendation. I do have the petitioner, Birch Dalton, as well as his representative, Jim Ake, who would like to present, and are both available for questions, as am I if you have any of the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. This item does require a public hearing this evening. I will open the public hearing on 2005-PUD-04, Junction PUD Amendment 4 at 7:37 p.m. And I'll read that email while we're waiting to see if any more come in.
Birch Dalton's here on the cell phone. I couldn't get in on Skype. Did you hear me, Mr. Graham?
Yes, sir. Are there any emails, Pam?
Let me check. No additional emails at this time.
Okay. Having none, I will close the public hearing at 7:39 p.m. Before I run down the list, Mr. Dalton, did you have any additional presentation before we go to the questions and comments of the commissioners?
Yes, I'll be happy to answer all the questions that I've seen in the emails, but I want to kind of, couch this in, this is a fairly simple amendment. This PUD was voted on back in 2014, 7-0 and 9-0 at APC and council. And what my amendment is asking is to actually shrink the footprint of a building and go 15 feet higher. Okay, the number of units won't change. You'll see there wasn't a fixed number of units in the PUD. And 2 is to expand the usage of the rental units that were already approved. So really 2 things, changing the text and to take account the new market conditions in Westfield. But if you look at the original PUD and the current plan that has taken effect, you'll see that this plan has changed the PUD to a far less dense and bigger mass of buildings on these properties. And that's between Riverview, Dr. Jack Miller, and the ad building that's now a dental office, and this remaining 2 acres. I'm acutely aware of the traffic issues at the roundabout because I'm dealing with that south of that on the Grand Millennium, which nice, we're having the new extension done, which will relieve some of the pressure to the south. Working with Riverview, and I'm acutely aware of the covenants of land because I wrote them when I sold the ground to Riverview in 14. The roundabout issue can be resolved with Riverview and the Shamrock Apartments, which we've already met on, in widening at least our portion of the road to 4 lanes to allow for 2 more lanes to go in there, which will alleviate the roundabout problem, at least up until the school. When you look at my request, the neighbors, the only calls and comments I got from the neighbors from the neighborhood meeting have been people who want to sell their property, not complaining about what we're doing here. So if you look at the renderings on page 11 of the original PUD that was voted on in 14, all I'm asking here is to change the size of the building instead of a bigger rectangle to one that's 15 feet higher at the most, 1 story. So I think I'm happy to address issues, each one of these emails, because I don't think people understand, simply like this last one you saw, that parking lot that you see built on was inadvertently built by the school on my property by accident. So the school, I, and Riverview would work together in creating a better traffic flow, and the fact that I'm shrinking the footprint of a building would add more parking availability. So I think the 2 big issues that I've been seeing in these today emails, traffic and use. I mean, the use was always going to be rental units. All I'm asking is allow nurses across the street at Riverview to be allowed to live there, in a sense, a little more in their market rate apartments. So with that, Mr. Graham, I'm happy to answer any questions of any of the APC members.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Sorry to cut you off there before. Dr. Kelleher. Dr. Kelleher, do you have any questions or comments?
There, I'm off mute. There was not a link to the original PUD, and I'm not that familiar with it, so I tried to look at it. And I guess my concerns initially were the height of the building, based on that it backs up to residential, and the increased traffic. If there are indeed plans for widening the road, I would like to see something like that included in the PUD, or at least have some kind of verbiage that addresses that, rather than hope that it happens in the future. And for a question for Birch, because there's a lot of traffic along there, and it goes into the school, and people are going to cut through that area anyway. But my question for Birch is, you're talking about going up, but then shrinking the size of the building. Where in the PUD do I find that the footprint has decreased, or how does that actually happen, other than, you're saying that? Because this has to be written for somebody, it might not be you who develops it. So I am stuck with the wording in it, not just, your idea of what you want to do, which I believe. But again, how much are you shrinking the footprint in order to gain the height? I guess those are my concerns. And I would like maybe to have a little more time to look at it. That's it.
Mr. Dalton, would you care to respond to Dr. Kelleher?
Is a question directed to me right now? I couldn't hear you, Mr. Graham.
Yes, she was asking you some specifics about.
Well, okay, yeah, on the road, I think there's more than just my project. in play here. I mean, the school needs to be involved, Riverview, and I've already talked about, again, donating land to help the situation. So I don't think it's mine personally, just engineer by myself, and, to go to that expense, before I have, I can just say that I'm not going to build something for $15, $18 million that doesn't have good traffic. I mean, you see what we did at Starbucks and other places, we provided for that. So, but shrinking the footprint is needed, for what I need in green space and also parks, for the retail. If you look at page 11 of the original PUD, which is on the exhibit is on the agenda there, because that's where I pulled mine up from. So you can see it there. What I'm asking is to change, instead of having a longer building, is to have a shorter building a little higher. And I would probably argue that the difference between a 3-story building as far as any height visibility or that versus a 4 is not a lot. Whereas having the building shrunk on 2 ends, having more availability for ingress and egress and so forth is more significant. But, I understand we can write something a little tighter, but, the setbacks and so forth have been set. So if you look at the setbacks, that pretty much tells you the maximum building size already.
Dr. Kelleher, do you have anything further at this time?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Berkman, any questions or comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I have a question regarding this new use being apartments versus the original, which was assisted living, which I feel would be very appropriate in that area because it wouldn't be a high volume traffic use. Multifamily, I think we were talking about 90 to 100 units off the top of my head. That's going to be a lot of traffic. And I have a real concern about those people cutting to the north through the school grounds. In addition to adding retail and some other things that I think were coming up in this at the intersection that everybody else is talking about at 32. And I know I've had experience with some doctors' offices at Riverview where they won't schedule appointments during the school drop-off or pickup, even currently. So that's just a major problem in that area. So I guess to summarize, I've got an issue with the traffic and also this change of use to multifamily.
Well, let me clarify. It's not a change of use to multifamily. If you go to section 2.5 of page 2 of the original PUD, it simply said senior living apartment. So it was already apartments. All I'm asking is that you allow somebody other than seniors to live there. And again, I've met with Seth Warren and the leadership at Riverview, and we've talked about them giving up some of their ground to the west and me giving up some of my ground to the east to widen it. So he's satisfied with better ingress than what he has now. And so am I, and the school gets the benefit of it, but the roundabout really gets the benefit of it. So if you can imagine the 3 lanes that are there now being widened with 2 more. So the school has straight lanes, I have turn lanes, he has a turn lane finally, and then on the coming back side, say going south side, you still have a straight lane. So we keep traffic flowing better. You have a traffic problem there now because it wasn't dealt with when we built River. And with the growth of the schools. So what I'm doing, I'm not changing the amount of people that was already proved to be there. If you read that section, it already says apartments for seniors. So we're changing who can live there, not a different apartment size or different number of parking places. So I think that needs to be clarified and understood now. We are acutely aware of the traffic, and I want to solve it before I commit to put the money in there. I mean, I've done a market study. I know where we're at. You know, I do have other apartment complexes approved, and I feel this one's the best one because of exactly what you said. Riverview across the street, people that work there want housing close, and, you know, both Seth and I want to solve the traffic problem.
Can somebody, I know it probably can't be answered right this moment, but it would be really helpful to understand how many apartments are approved right now along 32. I mean, if we start at Casey Acres, and then I believe there's a new apartments that are starting up in that Wheeler area, and I know there's some things approved on the east side. Pam or Kevin, would that be possible for us to get something that shows what's currently available and then also what's been rezoned so far as multifamily apartments?
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking Pam or Kevin if the planning department would be able to, not at this moment, but do that over the next couple weeks.
Well,
Yeah,
I can tell you.
Go ahead, Birch.
All right.
Go
I
ahead.
can tell you I have 1,100 approved. Kinky probably has 900 approved. So between he and I, there's 2,000. And then whatever the Wheeler, I think that was a 50 unit density. They probably have another 300 or 400. So I guess when you do your study, Kevin, or whoever's going to do it, it's probably upwards of 3,000 to 4,000 approved, not built.
Yeah, and you're talking probably citywide at that point, but
citywide.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can pull some numbers together and provide that information if you think that'll be helpful.
Well, I think it's helpful just because on this particular line, Birch, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this started to mention large families living there versus what I consider a senior apartment might have 1 or 2 people in it. And this is a switch to large families, so I do think it's probably adding some density of cars in it, given the language. And then one more question, and then I'll let somebody else talk. But you talk about having these be market value. Can you just define what that means? Is there some type of government subsidy involved in that, or what does that exactly mean?
Well, market value does not have government subsidy. Casey Acres, you know, where it's income-based or Section 42 or a HUD project, when you talk market, it's like Union Flats, Ashley Place, Carmel Landings, you know, people that pay market rate. So the rate on these apartments from a studio to a 3-bedroom would range from $800 to probably $1,400 a unit. So that's market rate apartments.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berkman. Mr. Horke, questions or comments?
I have listened to all the comments so far. I don't think I really have anything new to add to it. I understand what Birch is asking for and why, and I am not opposed to it, but I do think we need to review this a little deeper and have it on a future agenda to finalize as opposed to doing it tonight.
Okay. Mr. Johns, any questions or comments? Mr. Johns? Okay, we'll move on, and I'll come back if maybe he's got.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I was muted here. All right, yeah, I also am very concerned with adding multifamily dwellings as a permitted use, and also raising the stories from 3 stories to 4 stories, and adding a minimum of 18 feet to do that. I've got several issues and with some questions sprinkled in here, no particular order. I guess along with Jenny Kelleher, I agree that I'm concerned with the traffic issue. The fact that we're going to, Birch is recommending widening the road to 4 lanes, and then narrowing it down as it moves into the school campus area. So to me, it sounds like it'll be almost a funnel going in toward the campus. That's already a pretty heavily traveled road in the morning and in the afternoon. I've got some safety concerns with how that would work. I wonder if we've done some traffic studies, and I think it's something that we would need to have some input and some verification that Riverview is willing to give up part of their property to make the road widen at that point also. From a safety issues, I'm concerned what this development could do with respect to safety. In addition to the roads, we're going to have apartment buildings next to the school. We don't know what type of, there could be sketchy people there. I'm concerned with having a 4-story building in today's society with all the gun issues we've had and gun violence, where someone could be sitting up on top of that building with a rifle pointing down toward that school. And I'd like to have some comments from our police chief about what his thoughts are on that. Then just a general comment. The communities that I've been associated with or lived in the past, Carmel, communities I'm familiar with, Noblesville, Fishers, places where I've grown up, most of those suburbs and communities did not have multi-story, 4-story, 5-story buildings next to schools. It seems to me that we've already done that out at Shamrock Springs, and I'm always concerned with my own grandchildren going to that school and having to go past multi-story buildings now. And I'm wondering, this year we're talking about putting a 4-story building in right next to our key school campus for Westfield. So I wonder if that was envisioned in the comp plan when we started, and if that's not something that as a community we might want to look into, and something we might now want to get a word of or some input from the superintendent on that. Another issue, I had a comment from one of the city councilors today with respect to the viability of the retail stores. And it was just a comment saying that he had noted that several similar buildings built out in the Brownsburg area had retail facilities that weren't full. And he was a little worried that could happen here. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind moving forward. The parking issue, I'm concerned with adding 100 units to that building. Are we looking at 150 to 200 cars, particularly if we're going to put large families in there? I think probably closer to 200 of where those 200 cars are going to park. And then, of course, I agree with Christian regarding the multifamily units and the fact that we've got quite a few on plan already for Union Street Flats, the apartments that are being built by Old Town right down on 32 in Union, the Grand Millennium apartments. We've got a lot of those in the works. And then finally, I guess I was concerned with Birch's comments, and I think he's explained it somewhat with respect to workforce, and because when I first heard it was going to be seniors and workforce apartments, it almost seemed to me that workforce was synonymous with lower income. In fact, if it's market value, that's not an issue at that point. But I am concerned with the last thing is that Birch says that, quote, the apartments will service seniors and large families. And as we're sitting here in a COVID environment, I don't even know if seniors living together with large families in the same building is something that would be marketable in the future. So those are some of the concerns that I've got. I'd like to hear more from the city planners on the traffic study. I'd like to hear something from the police chief, the fire chief, and certainly something from the superintendent with the schools with respect to putting large multi-story buildings next to a school. That's all I've got.
Mr. Graham, can I address one real quick?
Hang on, let me chime in here real quick, Birch. This is Randy Graham talking. Mr. Johns, I would just say, and I know this is your first year on the APC, but if you have a list that large of concerns about a project, it's appropriate to share that with staff so they can share it with the petitioner. So some of this can be resolved before we get to the public hearing time. And unless all these things just arose in the last 15 minutes, which is possible, but it kind of sounds like you've thought some of it out. So just as a guide moving forward, it's helpful to everyone involved to have those questions that you may already have, and staff can be working on those with the petitioner prior to the public hearing. So, Mr. Dalton, if you would care to respond to any of that.
Well, not to all of them, but two things. Number one, the current PUD, Mr. Johns, allows for 5 to 6 story buildings right next to the school. If you look at District 1 and 2, okay? And it approved hotels. So I think you're concerned of building height and use. You need to look at the PUD that was envisioned and voted 7-0 when we did the Riverview deal. And two, I never said large family. Somebody else on the phone said that. I just said if a single mom across the street that works at Riverview would like to live there with her child or 2 children, good for her because they could walk to school. And I keep hearing this thing about apartments, multifamily. They're already approved, okay? Right now it's just age restricted, okay? So, I mean, the multifamily aspect has been, kind of asked and answered and voted on several years ago. So, and I've already committed $1.5 million to buy the last piece of ground from the school, which in totality, I paid almost $9 million to the school for this property. Scratch that, about $8 million. So, I've made my investment based on the PUD being approved in 14. Again, all I'm asking is to allow somebody other than just seniors to live in already approved apartment and to raise the verticality versus a horizontal. That's the only 2 things that's changing the PUD. The fact that, the traffic and all that, I'm acutely aware of. And the bottleneck at the school can be alleviated if the school wants to adjust their parking. But I don't have the authority to do that. So that's all I have on that list, Mr. Graham. Thank you.
Mr. Graham, may I ask one thing? It's Kristen Berkman. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Dalton. It's Exhibit 6 on our agenda that mentions the large families. That's where we're getting that. Exhibit 6 project narrative. The apartments above will aim to service seniors and large families at market rates. It's on the 3rd line from the bottom. Okay, sorry, thank you.
One other thing, this is Mike Johns, and I apologize if I misspoke, but on page 2 of the ordinance 20-13, it says requested modifications, and there are 2 of them cited. The first being permitted uses. The proposed amendment would add multi-family dwellings as permitted use. And second, general regulations would add up to 18 feet. So that's where I got those modifications from.
So, Pam Howard, would you enlighten everybody why we added multifamily to the text?
Yes, this is Pam Howard. The reason we're adding multifamily dwelling as the permitted use is because that's a defined term in our UDO, and as much as possible, we like to stick with our defined terms that we already have instead of establishing new terms. The previous ordinance is a little bit older, and it uses other terms such as the senior independent living and the senior assisted living facility. So instead of saying apartments or condominiums in addition, we've used the multifamily dwelling definition. But even without this amendment, senior independent living apartments would be a permitted use.
Thank you, Ms. Howard.
And then I can also just respond to a couple of the other comments, just in the fact that we can obviously coordinate with the Public Works Department regarding traffic on Shamrock Boulevard, as well as the police department and the school, to see if they do have any concerns about the building height in that area.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Howard? No?
Actually, yes, I'm sorry. I did receive, it looks like, one more email. I can just read it. It's from Amanda Hunt, who also sent the most recently sent email asking when the start date or breaking ground for the new building would be. So if Mr. Dalton could respond to that.
Even though the public hearing is over, Mr. Dalton, would you care to respond to that?
When it's going to start, when it be finished? Is that the question?
She just asked for the start date.
Oh, I don't think, once we get through the PUD amendment and, getting into construction and engineering drawings, we'll be lucky to get started, next construction season, 2021. And it'd probably be a 12 to 16 month completion, the longest, 16 months.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton.
Being in May and the world worried about PPP loans and, everybody looking negative towards the future, who can say?
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Maui, I called you out, but I didn't give you a chance to speak.
Yeah, question and comment as far as the two items being requested in the petition. First of all, as far as the use, I don't have any issue with lifting the age restriction from the senior apartments to our term of multifamily dwelling. So just feedback to you on that. I don't have any issue with that part. As far as the additional story and height, I didn't see, as I was flipping through the petition and then going back to the original PUD and all that, there wasn't a new site plan in the petition to show us exactly where the building is located, is there, or did I miss that?
No, there is not.
So in that case, at least verbally for now, I know the footprint did shrink as you went up a story, but what I'm trying to understand is what that means in terms of proximity to the single family toward the east. Did it, which way did the building footprint come in, and do you know what the distance is from that property line over at the east?
Yeah, I think on the east we still have that 15-foot buffer in the PUD, and so it would be the north-south. It would shrink down from the parking lot that's there, and a little farther up from the Dr. Miller's property, and it would probably stay the same depth, but it would just shrink down to give us more room around the buildings. As part of the development plan, there was a vision to hook a road between Dr. Miller's building, and if you look at District 3, it shook two buildings, so now we're just going to have one. But there's a requirement to put a connector road in, if you would, between, and it would be where my first cut would be into my property, and it needs to just dead end to the housing, because there was a vision back then that they would continue Penn Street through that Newbie addition and all that. So we provided for some city ground in there for a road, which will probably I imagine now that vision has changed. So as we look at the engineering, to answer your question, it would shrink north to south, if you would, not the dimension east to west.
All right, thank you. I only heard north and south before, and I just wanted to make sure I understood. With it not shrinking in the east to west direction, to me, the same concerns that we had with the original PUD when we limited the height adjacent to the single family still exist. Nothing's causing me to have less concern about that. So, Mr. Dalton, that is still something that I'm a little leery on right now. I'd be really interested, and I know it's not fully engineered, but you have a rendering, you have a pretty good idea. It's a good looking building, by the way, of what that might look like. I'd be interested to see if maybe your architect could do a quick section cut across the property. It doesn't have to be detailed, all the balconies and everything, but massing. I'd really like to see what this is going to do with respect to the neighbors over on Newby Court over there.
Okay.
And that's all I have, Randy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. McCarty, any questions, comments?
I'll be brief. First, I know I'm only 27, but I've been sitting here looking at that map, and I'm like, wow, I was the first class when Washington Woods turned into the intermediate school. And even 10 years ago when the football was going on there, and seeing this type of project there, like I could never imagine something like this. But we do have to act on, what has already been approved from the 2014, as Birch has mentioned. So acting on shrinking this, expanding up, and removing the age restriction. In those regards, I would be for it, just because now that I have a different perspective of working for the school system, there's a lot of teachers that are looking for this type of housing that looks as good as this building does, to be able to have a close proximity to work. So that would be the only thing that I would encourage is I would hope the property would be within cost efficiency for a new teacher, a newlywed teacher, someone along those lines to be able to live there, so that way the schools can continue to attract the top talent in the state, so that way we can keep our schools top in the state. In regards to your comments of widening the roads and working with the schools, Birch, again, I appreciate that. But yeah, I think it would be just to conclude, a positive for removing the age restriction, so that way we could, just have more livelihood downtown. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schmitz, any questions or comments? I'm sorry, no? Mr. Schmitz? We will come back to Dave. Ms. Spoljarek?
Well, this has been a very interesting conversation tonight, a little bit more than I anticipated. I have to say, and this goes back to almost the definition of the multifamily, I originally voted on this project, and at that time, when I think assisted living, and again, senior apartments, it's not a standard multifamily residential project that we're used to seeing. And maybe definitionally, we'll have to discuss that with staff and figure something out there. But to me, it's different, and it's not just age, because there's traffic components, there's workers involved. It's almost many times a more commercial endeavor, depending on what kind of assisted living facility it is. So for me, there is a difference, and I just wanted to weigh in with that. So it does concern me. There's one thing we have to keep in mind here that we haven't discussed is we were looking for intergenerational kind of stuff for our downtown. And I think at least part of it, having something that was designated more for seniors was advantageous for our downtown to make it a comfortable spot there for them. So again, I'm not saying that I can't think beyond that, but it was something that factored into my decision originally with the project. So I thought the neighbors in Newbie would be concerned with the height. I attended the neighbor meeting, didn't hear anything, which I was a bit surprised, because that height does concern me, but it seems the neighbors do not share my concerns, so I'm gonna let that go. But I'll hear the rest and see what you guys have to say. Thanks. So I'm gonna let that go. But I'll hear the rest.
Okay, Randy, are you still there?
We lost sound.
This is Cindy. Did you guys get my comments?
I did hear your comments.
I'm sorry. I was, one more time for Dave Schmitz.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
I'm fine, actually, and I'm having all sorts of technical problems here, but most of my concerns have been addressed by others, so I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to weigh in my turn this time. I have some things to say about this. I was there for the other one. I remember this project. Yes, to direct the issues directly, the Birch is asking for. I don't have an issue with the change of use, and I'm not hung up on multifamily because Pam explained that is the proper definition in 2020 for what this is called. So I'm beyond that. We don't have any building height issues. Mr. Johns alluded to it being possibly, he said somebody, I thought I heard him say someone getting on top of the building, maybe threatening near the school. The hospital's 6 stories. Rifleman's going to be on top of the hospital, not on top of the apartments. I don't really think that's a concern. I think traffic will actually improve with the project as the project develops, working with the hospital, working with the school. I think there's, I agree, Birch said there's work to be done there. But I think as the project develops, it's actually going to improve the traffic problem far beyond where it is now. I think it's advantageous at the location for the fact of what Mr. McCarty said, that teachers can live there as well as the medical people, as well as elderly people, as well as people that have kids that go to school, that live right next to the school. Won't be any more burden on the school bus. I don't really have any issue with either of the things he's asking for. I don't have any profiling issues with apartment people being sketchy. That doesn't hold any water. I've talked to Chief Rush about this. We've had this discussion many times as we went through these developments. It just doesn't hold water. So I think I thought it was a good project. We voted it through before, and I have no issues with the changes personally. So those are my comments. Does the staff or Mr. Dalton have anything further?
Dalton does not, but I thank all the members for their time and their input and what you do each day for everything we have to do in this city. And I respectfully appreciate what you do. And I'm here to answer questions, and I'm sure staff and I will be talking very soon. So I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. And I encourage the commissioners, if you think of something beyond this meeting today, please email the staff and so that they can get those concerns to Mr. Dalton and we can work through the project. Pam, did you have anything else on this?
Sorry, I have no additional comments. Thank you.
Okay. Well, with no further business on the agenda, Randall Graham will make a motion to adjourn.
McCarty, second.
Kelleher will second. Go ahead.
Everyone's ready to go here. All right, have a motion made by Randall Graham, seconded by Mr. McCarty to adjourn the meeting. Pam, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks. Mr. Schmidt? Ms. Golderick?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns? Mr. Johns? Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Randy?
Yes.
Ginny Kelleher?